Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Emily if you're new here. Today I'm going to go over my 2024 reading goals and the 24 books I want to read in 2024. So one of my goals this year is actually to use a reading journal to help track what I'm reading, help write down some thoughts I have, because I have the tendency of having like a data dump happen in my head when I'm done with a book. Unless it's like a 5-star read, then it just lives rent-free up there. That is my first goal, is to track everything in this reading journal. I am not increasing my Goodreads goal this year. I'm going to stick with 150 because some of the books I want to read this year are quite a bit bigger than last year's, and I don't want to put pressure on myself to just read and read and read to get to a higher goal. So I'm going to just stick with 150 books, and I think I can easily hit that by the end of the year. My next goal is to read 10 new-to-me authors. There are quite a few on my list of 24 for 24 that will be new authors to me, so I think that will be relatively easy to hit. I also want to read all of the Shadowhunters books. So this is just the first one in the Mortal Instruments, which is the first book you should start with when you're reading the series, whether it be just in series order or in the order Cassandra Clare recommends, which is, they're all kind of interspersed. This is always the first book. So I think there's 23 books in that series, so that'll be quite a bit of a challenge for me, but I think it's something that I will be able to achieve as well. The stretch goal for me, those are over here, is to read and annotate Harry Potter. Harry Potter is where my love of reading began. When I was in grade school, the books were coming out. I would go to the midnight release parties, get the book, and then not sleep until I finished reading it. So it holds a very special place in my heart, and I would love to annotate those books. However, I only have the hardbacks, and they are the first edition US hardbacks, so I will not be annotating those. So goal number 1 is to get paperback versions of those books to be able to annotate them. The next one is to read 10 nonfiction books. I think this is going to be hard for me. I know I did not read 10 nonfiction books this year, but I do have a few on my TBR. I have a few that I'd like to read in my head, so I'm hoping that I can get through 10 by the end of 2024. And lastly is to read 50% of my physical TBR as it stands at the end of 2023, which would be approximately 40 books, I think, somewhere in the 40s to read half of it. I am not going to be buying any books. I'm going to try to not buy any books for the first 3-4 months of the year to try to take this physical stash that I have down. There's a lot missing from this cart because they're sitting in front of me, because a lot of them, I tried to pick books on my physical TBR for my 24 for 24. I'll get to those in a minute, but I am going to try to not buy any books for the first few months of the year and figure out a way to reward myself with, like, I read so many off my physical TBR, I can buy one book. Other than I do get the book of the month and I get a romance reveal box, so I still get books that are on subscription that are built into my budget that I'm going to allow to continue for the first few months, all throughout 2024 actually. So I'm just going to quickly try to go through my 24 for 24. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these books because I like to go into books blind, so I'll just kind of tell you what they are, who wrote it, and the general synopsis. The first book on my list is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Divine Rival series, second and last book. I believe it's just a duology. It just came out on the 26th of December. I do not have it yet, but it is at the top of my list to buy when I relieve myself from a book buying ban. So that will not be getting read in the first few months of the year, but I definitely want to read it in 2024. The next book is a novel love story. This is Ashley Poston's newest release. It'll be a 2024 release, not out yet, but it is about a woman who stumbles upon a fairy tale town when she's lost while traveling, and that's pretty much all I know about it. The synopsis is very short right now, but I have loved both of her other books that I have read, The 7-Year Slip and The Dead Romantic, so I have a feeling I'm going to love this as well. It seems like it's in line with her magical realism way of writing romance novels, so I think I'll like it. Next on my list is Holly by Stephen King. This book is about Holly Gibney, who is a character that has been introduced in previous Stephen King books. I think I've talked about her before in previous videos, but I've read every other book that she's been in his line of work, and now she has her own. Basically all I know about this book, and kind of all I want to know about this book, is that Holly is hired out of the Finders Keepers agency, which is something that's founded in the Bill Hodges series. It's a detective agency she works for. She's hired to help find someone's missing daughter. and that leads her to this couple that owns this house that I don't know if it's like haunted, but there's definitely secrets that the house holds that somehow are involved in the story of this girl that disappeared. So that's all I really know about it. I do tend to love Stephen King novels. There are a few that I haven't, but for the most part, I enjoy his writing, and I've loved every book that Holly has been in, so I'm hoping that her own book lives up to those standards. So the next book is also a book I don't have yet, but I do have pre-ordered. It is Bloodguard by C.C. Robson. I'm not sure if this book was out previously. No, okay, so it comes out in June. I thought it was just a special release, but it's not. This book's mainly about like gladiators, I think, and this guy that was fighting to win his freedom, and they basically lied to him and took everything from him and left him. He's kind of seeking revenge on this kingdom that lied to him and took everything from him, and he wants his freedom. So he meets this girl that he shouldn't, he likes, but he shouldn't. She helps him in his path to gain his freedom and revenge on this kingdom. Next is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and I did just get the physical copy for Christmas, so I'm very excited. I believe this is just like literary fiction about two friends and different stages of their lives, and that they write video games together. That's all I really know. I've heard that it's like heartbreaking and touching, and it's beautifully written, and I'm very excited to read this. So I've also heard it's very hard to describe what this book is actually about, so that's all I got. That's all I can say about it, and I can't wait to read it. Next on my list is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I don't have this book. My sister owns it though, so I'll just borrow it from her. But from what I understand of this book, it's about two people that have been together since university and go on this summer trip with their friends every year. And then they end up breaking up, but their friends don't know about it. So they go on this trip faking still being together as to not ruin anybody else's time. And that's all I know. I've heard that some people think it's a beautiful rom-com. I've heard that it absolutely emotionally destroys other people. Don't know where I'll land on that spectrum, but I do like Emily Henry's books, so I'm excited to read this one. Next is The Atlas Paradox, which is the second book in the Atlas 6 series. I've been waiting for the paperback to come out before I get this, and it comes out, I think, January 9th. So that'll be a book I buy again when I'm off my ban. The end of Atlas 6 was kind of a cliffhanger. It's about these 7 magicians that are chosen as the best in the world to compete to be part of the Atlas 6. And the ending of the first one was kind of the end of that competition, but it didn't end how it should have. I don't know how really to describe it without blowing up exactly what happened. But it ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm very excited to read the next book, which is The Atlas Paradox. And then there's a third book that comes out on the 9th too. I think it's called The Atlas Complex, and these are by Olivia Blake. She's hit and miss with me. I liked this Atlas 6 book, but I did not particularly love One for My Enemy. But I'm hoping that the story continues, and I like the characters, so I'm hoping I'll, again, like the second book because I liked the first one. Next up is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. This is the second book in the Powerless trilogy, and it's not out yet, but I have it pre-ordered, so that'll be coming, I think, June or July of next year, and it will pick up at the events that ended in Powerless, with our characters, Peyton and Kai. So there was a big betrayal at the end of the first book, so I'm excited to see where this picks up because there was still action happening when the first book ended, so this book could not come out soon enough. Next is Red Queen. This is the first book in the Red Queen series. I've heard that Powerless took a lot of inspiration from this book, and from what I understand, it is about, again, like elites and non-elite people, and it all has to do with the color of their blood. And I believe there's a very strong female character in this series that has a romance with somebody. I don't know too much about it. Again, I like to go into books blind because I don't want other people's opinions to blind me to my own. So I'm excited to start this. I do have just this one right now. I'm not going to buy any of the other ones until I read this and see if I like it, which is very mature of me because that's not typically what I do. But Red Queen is the next one on my list. The next book is another Stephen King. It is Fairy Tale, and this is about a high school student who tragically loses his mother and then begins this relationship with a neighbor who has this mysterious shed that things happen around and noises come from that nobody really understands what's going on. And when this neighbor dies, he leaves a cassette tape to this student, Charlie, and it has all these secrets on it that like nobody would really understand, and it's very hard to believe. And then Charlie unravels all of these secrets on his own. That's all I know. Again, don't want to know too much. I probably wouldn't be able to understand a Stephen King book from the synopsis anyway, because it never goes where I think it's going to go. But I've been wanting to read this book for a few years now. I just bought it this past year, but it's one that I've had on my radar for a while. The next book on my list is The Liars Club by Monica Murphy. There's not too much about this. It is, again, another book that I have pre-ordered, and it's coming out in July 9th. As of right now. It was supposed to come out earlier. It's already been bumped. But it's a book that takes Bully and One of Us is Lying and mixes them into an irresistibly addictive novel about taking on the king of campus. So I think it's just about a mean guy in school who lies. So he had the way they're going to fight him is with the truth. So that's all I got. It's a very small synopsis. I honestly bought it because the special edition that's coming out is gorgeous, and I hope that's the one I get because that's the one I pre-ordered. It should be interesting. I do have One of Us is Lying. I have not read it yet, so I'm not sure what it's going to take from that, and I hopefully will read that one first, so we'll see. Next is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in the Shadow and Bones trilogy, and I have wanted to read this ever since I started watching the show on Netflix. I never made it through the show. Once I found out it was this book series, I stopped watching it, and I think they ended the series now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But from what I understand, this is about a girl that unlocks these powers that she didn't know she had, and she's training out to fight with the Grisha, who is like the elite army in this kingdom, and that's about all I got. So again, I liked the first few episodes of the show that I watched, so I think I will enjoy this, and I do have all 3 of these books already, so I can go right into the second one when I finish Shadow and Bone, if I like it. Next is the first read of 2024 for me, which will be Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Empyrean series, which started with Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing was about a collegiate atmosphere where people choose whether to be a dragon rider, a scribe, a medic, and I can never remember the 4th quadrant that they could go into. And we follow Violet and Xaden. Violet is forced to go into the rider's quadrant by her mother after her father passes away, and she had been training all her life to be a scribe. She's not really fit to be in the rider's quadrant, but it's about her proving herself and becoming stronger. And there's a romance between her and Xaden, and it ends more into the action side of things. Like the first Fourth Wing book, that book was very high stakes. Like anybody could die at any time, you just didn't know. So I'm sure that will continue into this one. There is like an underlying war that's going on that I think is going to be more prominent in this book based on how Fourth Wing ended. But I've been avoiding spoilers for close to 2 months now, so I'm looking forward to reading this so that I don't have to watch what I'm scrolling anymore. Next is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a 4-book series that follows these elite teenagers, I believe, that are working for the FBI, and they all have these like innate abilities. It's kind of, I've been told, Criminal Minds, but like YA. So there's one girl, I think this book follows a girl that's very good at profiling. There's, I think, somebody that's like really good at hacking into things. I'm not sure what the other books are about, but I at least want to get through the first book in this series. And from what I experienced with Jennifer Lynn Barnes in the Inheritance Games, she writes very short, very quick chapters, and makes the books go so quickly, and you don't want to put them down. So I'm hoping that The Naturals continues on with that theme. Next is Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. This is the only Alice Feeney book I have not yet read. I bought this in October this year, and from what I understand, it's about a woman is murdered years after a baby goes missing, and somehow the cases are connected. So it's finding out who the victims really are, who the suspects are, how they're interconnected. I don't, again, know too much about it. Alice Feeney has a tendency to give you, again, a synopsis that isn't really going to tell you what's going on in the book, similar to Stephen King. So I've heard mixed reviews on this, but I'm going to go into it with an open mind because I've liked books of hers that other people haven't, so we'll see how this one ends up. Next is The Host by Stephenie Meyer. This is probably the book I have had on my TBR the longest because I bought this in high school after, was it high school? After the Twilight series was like really popular, she brought this book out, And I started to read it and I just couldn't get into it. But that might have just been because that wasn't the kind of thing I was into at that point. It seems more interesting to me now. From what I remember, this is like a dystopian novel where these aliens take over human bodies at their host, and they slowly like take over and kill the host, so they have to keep hopping from body to body. And I believe there's a body that one of the aliens gets into that will not relinquish the control of their mind like all the other bodies have, so there's that battle there. And that's, again, all I really remember. I liked Twilight when I was younger, so hopefully as an adult, this book that's a little more complex will be just as interesting to me as Twilight was when I was in high school. Next is also a book I do not have yet, which is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. That is the newest release in the Crescent City series that comes out at the end of January. I did not pre-order that, but we'll see. That's probably going to be the first book I get after my ban, if I don't receive it as a gift in the meantime, but it just picks up after the absolute I wanted to throw my Kindle across the room ending of Sky and Breath, which was the second Crescent City book. So I'm excited to finally have some type of answer as to what is going on now in this universe, because everything, as in most Sarah J. Maas books, went to hell in a handbasket at the end of that book, and she left us on quite the cliffhanger. The next book I have is 0 Days by Ruth Ware. Again, this is the only book by Ruth Ware that I have not yet read. Her and Alice Feeney are my favorite thriller authors, so I have made it through their backlists. This is about a couple who they're like elite security people. The husband handles the like physical aspect of it, and the wife handles the technical aspect of things. And she comes home one day to find her husband dead in their home, and the police are closing in on her as the only suspect, so she has to kind of unravel what happened and clear her name. Again, I have not heard much about this book, so I don't know what I'm going to think about it. I haven't really seen anybody read it yet, so I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to finally be caught up on Ruth Ware before she probably releases another book without me knowing, but this is also a book I'd like to read this year. Next is Six of Crows. I kind of boxed myself in with this one. This is also by Leigh Bardugo, and this is the duology that follows the Shadow and Bone series, so I have to read those 3 books before I go into this. I've heard you don't have to, but I would like to read those 3 books before I go into this because they do precede the events of Six of Crows. I have heard that people like this more than they like Shadow and Bone, and that's where the TV series was about to go into this part of it when it got canceled. I'm excited. This will be my first time reading Leigh Bardugo this year, so I'm interested to see if I enjoy her writing, because I know she has a bunch of different books and series out there that I could go into if I do enjoy this one. And next is another book I don't have, is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This, from my understanding, is a retelling of Lizzie Borden in some sense of the way where a girl is accused of killing her whole family, and she's telling everyone she's innocent. So I'm not sure exactly what goes on with that, but as a crime junkie and someone that is very into paranormal things and has seen like the shows that they've done on Lizzie Borden in her home, not only the home that the murder was committed in, but the home that she bought. It was Maplecroft that she bought after in that same town. All you gotta say is that it's like a Lizzie Borden retelling, and you've got me hooked. So I'm excited for this. I've not yet read Riley Sager. I did get The House Across the Lake by him for Christmas, so I'll probably read that first, which I've heard is some people's favorite book by him. So I'm excited to, again, start with a new author and read a retelling of a story that's very fascinating to me. Next up is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I believe this is about a girl who was stolen away from her parents at a young age. I think they were murdered. Her and her siblings are stolen to go live in the Fae Kingdom. And so many years down the road is where this book takes place. And it was just like revenge plots because the Fae hate the humans and what they did to her and her sisters and her relationship with the Cruel Prince. So I've heard great things again about this series. I do have the second 2 books. I can't remember what they're called right now. On the way, I bought my last book haul of the year was from Book Outlet the day after Christmas. They had their end of year sale. I got like 7 books for $40, and 2 of them were the next 2 in this series. So I can go straight into those once I read this one. Next is Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. This, I'm not too sure exactly what the premise of this is, other than there's been these hurricane wars going on in this kingdom for years and years, and our main character is on the good side, and like there's like a Night Emperor that's the bad side, and her family are part of the people fighting against the Night Emperor for their freedom, but she has a secret that she possesses these powers that people don't know she has. That's all I know. I've heard mixed reviews again about this book, but it was really pretty, and I think I'll like it. So I'm pretty open when it comes to fantasy, but as long as the story moves along, I'll probably like it in some way, shape, or form. So this is the next book that I plan on reading in 2024. The next book is another book I don't have yet, but it is on its way. It was in the book outlet haul, which is Five Survive by Holly Jackson, also known as the writer of the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. This book is about 6 friends who are on a road trip and are all of a sudden being hunted by this like assassin that starts shooting at their caravan, and it takes place I think over the course of like 8 to 12 hours. I can't remember, but I know that like each chapter is an hour and it ticks down into like the end. And they're just like slowly unraveling who the target actually is and what's going on. And I've heard great things about this book. It's a thriller, which I love, and I did enjoy The Good Girls Guide to Murder, so I like Holly Jackson's writing, so I'm hoping that I enjoy this as much as other people have. And finally, a nonfiction book that I will definitely be reading this year is Matthew Perry's memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. I wanted to buy this when it first came out, but I just never got around to it, and then when he unfortunately passed away, it was very hard to get my hands on this, so the next time I was in Barnes and they had it, I did pick it up. I do want to read this. It's still a little fresh for me. I'm a big Friends fan. I still can't really watch the show right now because it's sad. And I think that a lot of the stuff that he talks about in this is probably something that led to his death. So it'll be difficult to get through, but I've heard good things about it from people that have read it, and I think it'll be interesting to get his perspective on the struggles that he had in his life. So that's it. That's 24 books that I want to read in 2024, plus what my reading goals for the year are. Let me know what your goals are, if any of these books are on your list to read next year, and I hope you all have a great day whenever you're watching this, and I'll see you next time. Bye!